Let's get started. Let's have a conversation, Richland. Welcome to our discussion this evening on community engagement and communications in the city of Richland. I want to go through some quick introductions. So my name is Ryder Smith. I'm president and co-founder of the firm here at Trippepi Smith and Associates. And I'm joined by two of my coworkers this evening. They are Sydney Overly, who's a senior business analyst and has been the lead on our project of engagement with the city. And then Skylar Addison, who is a business analyst, soon to be senior business analyst. She recently got a promotion that'll be in effect next month. And we're also joined by Holly Alexander, who works with the City of Richland. Holly, do you want to introduce yourself real quick and explain a little bit about what you do at the city?
Sure. My name is Holly Alexander, and I'm the communications and marketing manager here at the city. And I am responsible for all internal and external communications, including all of our social media, our website, our cable franchise agreement, anything that has to do with our brand. And so this effort that we're going through with Trippepi Smith is going to help solidify and formalize some of our communications and marketing efforts moving forward at the city.
Thanks, Holly. It's been really a pleasure to get to know you and the entire Richland team and the work that we've been doing in the city. And
Likewise.
I
Thanks
appreciate the
very much.
opportunity and appreciate you taking the time this evening to join us. I will just note too, for the purposes of flow of the evening, we do have a hard stop at 7:30, so we'll try to move expeditiously. We have about 14 slides to get through before we get to Q&A, but it's really designed to make sure we're all operating on the same page with information and background for the conversation this evening. So one of the things I just want to also note is I really thank the community members for showing up tonight for the conversation. I know that I can tell this because of social media and media covers, there was some significant interest in some social media postings from an elected official in Richland. And that has prompted a lot of interest, particularly in the nature of the webinar tonight. And I just wanted to note that this webinar is really focused on the scope of work that we have with the city. That scope of work is around social media, email campaigns, website, all the things that Holly is responsible for, that is produced by the city on city official channels and not elected officials on elected official channels. So if there are questions that come up tonight about some of that stuff, that's really not in the scope of the work for my firm and the work that we're doing, and I'm not going to be able to speak to those things or answer those items. And really, I want to make sure I'm respectful of the taxpayers of Richland and keeping myself focused on the scope of work that we've been asked to deliver on. So I'll be deferring on some of those questions because they just will be out of scope for me to address this evening, and stick to the things we've been hired to actually address and try to work on, which is official city communication platforms that we're helping to enhance and improve upon, so we can increase transparency and public engagement on a range of issues. As is noted on this slide, we are recording this evening, so just keep that in mind. In a later phase of this, we'll bring people off mute and give you an opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas, and those will be all part of this recording. And then we intend to make the recording part of our information effort, so we can gather all the notes and make sure we don't miss critical feedback. We do have an ability to submit some questions. Indeed, I'll just note that we also had the opportunity to submit questions ahead of time, and we had several pre-submitted questions. But if you wish to ask questions as we go through our presentation this evening, you can go through the Q&A feature and submit those, and we'll attempt to get to answering your question. Again, as long as it's also kind of germane to the scope of work that we have for the work we're doing here in the city. We also have questions for you as residents of the community. So when we're asking your questions, we'll be inviting you to raise your hand to answer those questions, and then we'll call out your name and then invite you to and unmute your line, and then invite you to go ahead and share your thoughts or ideas in response to some of the questions that we'll be sharing this evening. Let's go to the next slide. Also, I'll just note that we have a Google form available. If you want to scan this with your cell phone, you can do that. We'll also we just dropped a link into chat as well. It's a very simple form. It's just designed to help kind of segregate some key questions around communications in the city that we think would be helpful, that we're really trying to get answers to this evening. And if you feel like either you're shy, you don't want to come off mute and share your thoughts, or you would just prefer to have a platform to let your fingers do the talking, then we welcome that feedback. That'll all feed back into us as well. And we welcome those submissions in lieu of talking tonight if you so choose. So just know that we're trying to give you as many options as possible for how you wish to express or share your ideas with us this evening. All right, and let's go to the next slide. And then fundamentally, I'll just note our goal for this evening is to hear from you. We encourage you to bring your ideas and your questions so we can better engage and communicate directly with you, and discuss platforms and tools that Holly and her team, for what they control for city platforms, can better leverage to connect and communicate with residents. It's been very clear from our work with all the entire team at Richland that there's a huge interest in wanting to do more to communicate with residents and engage with them. This is frankly something we've done as a firm with over 200 local government agencies, primarily on the West Coast of America. And so we know there's a hunger out there for local governments to talk and engage with residents. And we also know that there's lots of challenges with that because there's so many different ways to communicate. It's not like you can just, I have a buddy of mine who's a city manager. He used to be the city manager in Tucson. And he told me, like, anytime he wanted to tell the public what was going on, he'd call up the local paper and the 3 local TV stations and walk down the steps. And at 4:30 in the afternoon, he'd give a press conference. And by 5 o'clock that night, the story would be everywhere and everybody in Tucson knew what was going on. And those realities are over now, right? I mean, the 24/7 nature of the internet have completely changed that paradigm. So, and it's diversified just the sheer range of where people get their information. And that's created lots of challenges and opportunities for city governments. And that's exactly the kind of issues we're wrangling through as we try to help the city go from good to great with communications. So that's our goal tonight, is to hear from you. Go to the next slide. So we're going to do our programming from 6 to 7:30. We'll wrap up by then. We're going to talk now a little bit about overview and background, discuss the 5 key focus areas from the work that we delivered around our assessment of the state of communications and the communication tools that the city has. And then we'll go through Q&A. We're going to start in Q&A with the questions that were pre-submitted. And then we'll move into any additional questions that have been submitted to from you all this evening. And then we'll go into my Q&A for you, which is getting a chance to ask you questions and you come offline and share some of your verbal thoughts. And then with that, I guess we'll go to the next slide. And I think I hand it over to you, Sydney.
Thank you, Ryder. So in 2022, the city launched a citywide survey through National Community Survey, which included a section on inclusivity and engagement. And when asked to rate the quality of the city's public information services, it received a generally positive response, with most rating it good. And then these ratings slightly dropped when asked about how the city did with being open and transparent with the public, with 33% of the city rating the city as good. So these data points are actually comparable to the national average that National Community Survey provided. And the full report is available on the city's website if you would like to take a look at that data. But with that being said, the city did want to exceed those marks, which prompted a deeper interest in reviewing city communications and efforts. So the Richland City Council used the findings of this 2022 survey to develop the 2024 to 2026 strategic plan, and the adopted strategic plan included specific goals around increasing public engagement and public information. So key areas that the city is working to advance are increasing public trust, increasing participation on key initiatives, and ensuring residents and stakeholders are well informed. So as a starting point to achieving these objectives, the city partnered with us to do a communications assessment to examine their current communication and engagement tools and practices and offer recommendations for improvement. And throughout this process, we ensure we center our recommendations around what effective communications and public engagement entail, which often require proactively planning communications, providing transparent and insight into city projects, engaging the community through feedback to shape decisions, and then streamlining communication processes across departments. So that is the basis of our recommendations around this communications assessment that we performed. And with that, I'll pass it to Skylar to dig into a bit of the findings of the assessment.
Great, thank you, Sydney. Okay, so Richland's by the numbers chart helps provide more context on the city's current and potential audience reach, providing some key insights as to how we can better reach the Richland community. And likewise, it also helps us understand how we can strengthen that reach through existing tool sets. So all of this data that you see here is as of October 2024, and it provides a key snapshot of Richland's audience size across digital platforms, with the number of followers and subscribers on each network. As you can see here, this is all mapped out from lowest to largest. The city's actual population is the third bottom line on this chart. And right now you can see it is at about 63,000. And likewise, the city also has 41,000 registered voters. Most notably, I'd like to call out that the city's largest audience is currently on RPD's or Richland Police Department's Facebook page, which actually has more followers than the city has residents, which is definitely unique. Part of that is due to the RPD's page having a viral post a couple of years back, which really boosted follower accounts. And as such, about half of those followers are from the Tri-Cities area, with about 20% of that from Richland proper. Otherwise, there is a pretty significant amount of international followers for Richland PD's page. And then right behind Richland PD's Facebook page is the city's official Facebook page with about 18,000 followers. And we typically see too that on average for any given Facebook page, the typical reach is about 4% of what that actual follower count is, just due to kind of how the algorithm operates. And then moving up the chain, you can see some smaller numbers for other social media platforms such as Instagram and LinkedIn and X. And I'd also like to note the largest number on here at the very bottom is the service area Facebook potential reach. And so clearly that number is larger than the city's population. And there's a few different reasons for that, primarily being that Facebook previously allowed advertisers to target only people living in a certain location, but as of May 2023, that essentially expanded due to people living or recently being in a location. And with Richland having a heavy commuter population, there being large throughways through the city, that ends up capturing more users, which is why that number is pretty significantly higher there. Next slide, please.
Actually, before you change slides, can you go back real quick? Sorry, Skylar, I'm gonna touch on two key points here from my perspective. First, the array of ways to communicate that are evidenced here is kind of reflective of my earlier comments I made about just the sheer diversity of ways to try to reach people, because lots of people get their information in different ways. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on X, whereas there's a lot of other people who spend a lot of time on Facebook. When we're looking holistically at trying to reach audiences, we know we have to go through lots of different platforms to try to reach those folks. And I know that one of the things that when we put up numbers like this is we're interested in a basic idea that we need to make sure we have a distribution channel to reach the folks who live inside Richland and beyond. And to do that, we need to make sure these numbers continuously increase and we invest in ways to directly communicate, right? So the more direct emails we have, the more followers we have on Facebook, the more followers we have on X, the greater the probability is that when we have content and information that we've invested in trying to share and be transparent with the public, the more opportunity we know we can actually have the public get that information. And Skylar made a particularly important point, which is just because you follow the page doesn't mean you always get the updates, because we're all subject to the whims of big technology platforms. So in the case of Facebook, for example, we might have 18,000 people that are following the city's Facebook page. And there's, of course, a subset of that actually lives in Richland. But even when we post, assuming it's about a 4% of the people that follow the page see that content, because of how the algorithm works, that really means we only reach about 800 people with that particular post. Now, if we boost it or it gets a lot of traction and the algorithm starts to gin it up and make it exciting and it starts showing it to more people, we could certainly expand that. But clearly reaching only 800 people on Facebook when we have a population of 60 plus thousand, that's not a good number. And those are the kinds of things and the metrics that we really want to focus on about how we find those audiences and reach them as much as possible. And that's what the city's interest is in doing. And that's what we're trying to help the city navigate through. All right. Thanks for letting me step on you there, Skylar, but I want to make a couple key points around that.
Of course. All Great. So now I am going to provide a brief synopsis of 5 major recommendations that we made within the report, which are relevant for our conversation here today. Next slide, please. So one of those recommendations is to improve proactive communications. A major factor in facilitating trust with the community is by providing transparent communication, which is most often seen as to whether those efforts are reactive or proactive. So as a general rule of thumb, it's best for organizations to provide timely and accurate information upfront on projects, rather than waiting to see kind of community reaction and gauging whether there are questions on a topic to spur engagement. And then in particular, we will be working with the city to ensure proactive communication is implemented for the downtown connectivity project, ensuring that businesses and residents are kept in the loop on construction milestones and any relevant information pertaining to that project, just as an example. And then likewise for large community events such as Ironman, which involves a lot of cross collaboration with key stakeholders, community partners, and a number of city departments, it is imperative that the city create a robust communication plan well in advance that ensures all of these efforts are synchronized to have a safe and efficient event that's enjoyable for the whole community. Next slide, please. And the most cost-effective and efficient way to reach a plurality of the Richland community is to leverage the city's existing digital toolset that we took a look at on the previous by the numbers slide. So currently the city pushes out the most content to Facebook, where we have 2 of the largest followers on RPD and then the city's main page. But however, there is room for expansion on existing platforms that the city leverages, such as Instagram and X, as well as potentially exploring new communication channels, such as Nextdoor, where you have the ability to directly provide updates to residents with email notifications or targeting specific neighborhoods for communications. And then likewise, outside of the digital realm, physical signage, for example, could be leveraged more often for neighborhood-specific project updates, such as with a public works project happening in that neighborhood. And across all of these platforms, the city should also designate which topics would have expanded Spanish language accessibility through translated communications and deciding which platforms that those translations go out through. I will note that the city currently has bilingual staff on their customer service team who regularly engages with citizens to provide translations. Next slide, please. The City of Richland has an intricate and important place in American history through the Hanford site and its role in the Manhattan Project, just for an example. Throughout interviews with city staff and key stakeholders, a desire was expressed to revisit the city's branding to more accurately represent its history and advertise Richland as a great place to live, work, and play, such as highlighting its expansive green space and vibrant downtown area. As such, we recommend that the city look to develop their brand pillars, statements, and related taglines to help unify city messaging and branding across communication platforms to help increase visibility of Richland for its residents, businesses, and visitors. Next slide, please. And then Richland also has a great opportunity to strengthen its relationship with local media organizations and entities by forging two-way dialogues and providing proactive updates on city business. And then likewise, the city can also take effort to advertise what makes Richland a particularly vibrant and unique community, such as noting community-centric success stories from residents who participate in the city's many recreation programs or events, for example. And then likewise, also amplifying those efforts with prominent local voices, bloggers, and Facebook group administrators, for example. So going outside of the traditional media landscape. Next slide, please. And then finally, we also recommend that the city continue to leverage and expand their partnerships with local organizations by increasing in-person presence at related events, such as with Habitat for Humanity or Visit Tri-Cities, as an example. When working with local organizations, the city should provide a roadmap for communications, which establishes a regular rapport and expectations for outreach to standardize how these events are advertised to the community, and likewise what the city's role is with participation. And all of this is within the effort of reaching a wider swath of Richland residents through in-person engagement. And with that, I will pass it off to Ryder for the next slide.
Here we are at the Q&A phase. Thank you, Skylar. I appreciate that. So as I had noted, we have questions for you, but first we want to respect those that submitted some questions ahead of time and try to do our best to answer some of those. I do want to note that there were a number of questions that were submitted ahead of time that I would describe as kind of policy area questions concerning Richland's preparation or anticipated preparation for, say, federal government layoffs or traffic volumes around a Costco opening or issues around homelessness and where to park RVs for the unhoused, all of which are legit questions. And we're passing those questions on to the appropriate departments or folks to answer some of those for you, because I believe when you submitted questions, we were able to also take in just an email address. But because those are policy questions that aren't really relevant to the question of how do we generally just reach audiences and better communicate and connect with people, and we don't have the right people on the call this evening or the webinar this evening to answer those questions, we're not going to answer those questions. We are going to focus on the ones that were germane specific to kind of communications related issues and do our best to answer those. And I think that'll become evident as we outline the questions that we're going to tackle. So one of the first questions, and I think, Holly, I'll throw this one to you, that was asked is, what is the strategy, if any, for Richmond to communicate with the Spanish-speaking community, particularly those who do not speak English as a second language?
Thank you, Ryder. It's a very valid question. We have not had a high demand to consistently produce materials in Spanish. However, we have done so for key efforts such as the National Community Survey. And as Skylar mentioned before, our customer service team consists of bilingual staff who engage with our citizens. And we're continuously evaluating how we improve our communications for all of our residents. And I know that's a recommendation that your team made for us. And that's certainly something we can incorporate into our processes.
Yeah, I would also observe too that at the same time you're looking at evolving your processes, the entire world of technology is changing around us as well, right? So for example, in the Facebook world, even if you post in English, if you default to Spanish, it will attempt to translate your English into Spanish language by default within the platform. And then there's solutions like a Wordly that does real-time language translations. And so what we're seeing is AI in particular, and not to jump on the AI bandwagon here, but we're just seeing some interesting technological evolutions that are making multilingual communications more affordable, first and foremost, and more viable for the public in general to get to use. And so it'll be very curious to see how some of those technology solutions also help expand the pool or the reach of our communications as an organization. And so part of us is just to collaborate with you on sharing best ideas around some of that.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's great.
A second question that came in was, what community engagement opportunities will there be for the comprehensive plan updates? Can we get on an email list for those? And I guess before we answer that question, Holly, could you just explain what the comprehensive plan update is?
Yeah, it's I believe it's an every 5-year update that the city's required to go through to the comprehensive plan. And at the same time, we'll be updating our Parks and Recreation plan as well as our transportation plan. And that's all happening, kicking off this year to be finalized in 2026. And we will be working with a consultant who will be preparing a public engagement process for council to review and approve. The comprehensive plan update process will provide numerous opportunities for citizens to be engaged throughout our entire update process. We have talked internally about trying to streamline all the different planning efforts and be more strategic about some of those public outreach opportunities that we'll have. But it will be open houses, surveys, as well as public hearings. And so we don't have an email list set up yet. That will come soon. But yes, there will be an opportunity for people to sign up and receive updates about the process.
And I think to your point, fundamentally, the comprehensive plan is about integrating infrastructure, zoning, growth, and trying to create a master plan to make sure that has a comprehensive feel, hence the word comprehensive, so that you end up in a better place 5 or 10 years from now or 30 years from now than you would be if it was just haphazard and unplanned. Okay. The next question that we were asked was, how can we learn how each city council member feels about a particular issue, like a potential performing arts center or children's museum? Does the council ever come out in favor of a particular project like that? How do they do it? Or if a city council is not in favor, what's the best way to talk with them about that? So first of all, great questions. Fundamentally, I'm gonna just answer this generically because this is not specific to the council members in Richland as much as it's just the reality of city council. Across America, like council members are have free speech, and they can choose when to express themselves and when and how. That some of them choose to do that in speeches, some of them choose to do that in social media, some of them choose to do it in coffees, some of them choose to discuss it in church or when they're in the grocery store and somebody comes up and talks with them. So the one kind of nice thing about one of many things that's nice about local government is you have a snowball's chance in heck of actually running into your elected official when you're at the grocery store or out and about at community events and things like that, because they are local to your community. And how they choose to express themselves is entirely up to them, right? So that's not really a city policy dictate. Ultimately, when they're on the dais and there's a vote on an item, they end up having their viewpoint expressed. I mean, theoretically, they could say nothing and merely cast a vote, which expresses a viewpoint or opinion, or they express themselves at it. So that's usually where you often see these things more widely discussed and exposed or reviewed. And then last but not least, I will just note that in some cases, depending upon the item that they're addressing, there may be some restrictions in council members not expressing a preconceived notion of an outcome of a vote. Until there's been a thorough public hearing process and additional information shared, and it's been shared equally among all the council, so that when they go to take a vote, they're operating with the same information as their fellow council members and can make a informed decision in that context that's kind of been free of bias. So there may be different circumstances where that may or may not be applicable, but there could be a range of reasons why a council member may hold off on expressing opinion until they've been fully informed and briefed on the issue before they express themselves. All right, another question that was submitted is, what is the city's policy regarding elected officials engaging with the public on social media? Holly, I think I'll throw this one to you.
Sure. Well, as a city, we're encouraged to use social media. We have, like you mentioned earlier, we have 12 different platforms, but to use it when appropriate and to further the goals of the city and the missions of all of the departments and divisions within the city. The city maintains a social media policy to help guide employees as well as elected officials. Elected officials are provided training, and individuals are not to speak on behalf of the city on city platforms or share information that is confidential in nature unless they are authorized. However, they are entitled to share their opinion on their personal pages. It is their right.
Okay. And then there was questions that were raised, frankly, about Trebeppy Smith and our contract work with the city. So I just wanted to address those. The question was, we're being paid $200,000 to address transparency and resident engagement. How do we plan to improve that? It asked a series of questions about council members and their posting activity and how we propose to address that. So first, on the council member activity, again, that's out of scope for our work, so it's not something we're really addressing. We're to the extent there are policy issues or policies being adopted, as Holly just referenced, we're happy to collaborate with the city and offer ideas and feedback. I do want to just clarify that the contract we have with the city is total work is approaching $200,000 or approximately. Our work that we're focused on for doing a full communications assessment that we've delivered in a workshop, and then this follow-on work we're doing tonight and the ongoing work that we'll be doing for developing a strategic plan to implement the recommendations we made. All that work is about $90,000 of work. And then separate from that, we've also been engaged by the city to supplement the comms team that's operating at City Hall and help support them in a big community outreach effort regarding the Downtown Connectivity Project, which is a project that's going to see the transition of some streets into one-ways near the downtown core area. And because the city is super committed to public outreach and engagement on that and making sure it goes as smoothly as possible, even though we're going to have the natural disruption that comes with major construction, they wanted to make sure they were doubling down on their and reinforcing the efforts of communicating with the public. And so a big chunk of our work, actually the majority of our work, is going to be focused on that activity over the next a year plus, frankly, of outreach work that's anticipated to be associated with that. So that's really where a big chunk of our work is focused on for the totality of the work that question was seeking to address. Okay, and then I see we had a question from Andrea, which is, how can we learn more about the potential plans to convert a couple of streets to one-ways, and how can the public weigh in on this? What a segue. So first of all, I would just say we're going to be working on the outreach work. But to be clear, the outreach phase that we're involved in is the outreach work of the actual implementation of the downtown connectivity project. To the best of my understanding, and maybe I'll just be silent here and let you jump in, Holly, but to the best of my understanding, this is a project that's greenlit, is happening. It's backed by a bunch of grant money from the state and federal level. And it's just a question of when we start the groundbreaking is my perception of things.
Yeah, that's correct. There have been several years of planning efforts and focus groups, stakeholder outreach. Several different concepts were created and reviewed, and public was able to provide input. Focus groups provided input, and ultimately the couplet concept was the one that was selected by City Council. They've taken several years to be able to obtain the funding necessary to make this project happen. And so we anticipate we're in the design phase right now, and we do anticipate later in Q4 that we will begin construction. So we are getting ready to kick off our planning efforts with Tripp Smith to engage very early with the business owners along the corridor, as well as everybody throughout our region who will be impacted by this significant effort.
All right. And I would presume there's some existing website already with some information about this project.
There is.
On the city's website. So that's probably where you could start now to learn about that. And as this project is moving along, there'll be even more extensive information made available about that subject. So, all right. And then there's not a follow-on, but a separate question, which is Desiree asks, how would you provide any proof of success of your $200,000 bill to the city? What does that look like? So I just want to make sure I'm clarifying. There's two separate engagements we have. One is focused on the comms assessment and the strategic plan work, which is about $90,000 of work. And then separately, over the course of the next year plus, we'll be working with the city on a full range of communication outreach work, assisting with the downtown connectivity project and trying to communicate about that. So I'll attempt to answer this as best I can in terms of proof of success. We have a work product we have to deliver for the city, which we've already delivered that. And I think that's been well received by the city council and city staff in terms of its comprehensive nature and analysis. We will also be delivering a strategic plan to them to give them a guidepost of things to go from good to great with communications. And obviously we'll be judged about the quality of that delivery when we hand that off to staff as well. I would hope that as the city, assuming they follow through with some of the recommendations, that we will see increased distribution of content, more brand identity associated with that content, consistent pacing of the outreach work, and essentially a number of other improvements along the areas that Skylar succinctly outlined in our PowerPoint deck earlier. Generally, where we see this ultimately measured would be, and I think frankly goes back to the root of the entire kind of kickoff for this interest and why it became a strategic objective of the city council, directing city staff to help improve community engagement and confidence in the communications, which is the survey that took place through Polco. And so those similar questions are going to get asked again, and there'll be an opportunity to see if the needle's moved. And I don't anticipate that needle moves with haste. I believe the plan is every 2 years, Polco is the survey pacing. So we're theoretically going to come up on that sometime in 2025, I believe is the next survey period, right, Holly?
It's actually 2026.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my apologies. So 2026, there'll be another survey. We'll benefit from those survey results, and then they'll continue to do the work. And then the survey after that, we hope to see improve. So I guess in some ways, you'll either experience it because you see improved communications. You'll experience it because you'll feel like you're better informed, or there'll be better pacing, or you'll be able to more clearly identify good city comms. Or we'll see it in the survey data that demonstrates an increase in some of the metrics that the city council was specifically seeing get invested in. And I certainly hope to see that success. I hope that given the practices and ideas we've shared, we hope they prove to be helpful for the city staff, the city council, and the community at large. There's a follow-on question that actually that connects to that from my mind, which is, and then I guess I should say, so that's all speaking to the work we're talking about with our comms assessment, our strategic plan. The other bigger chunk of our work, frankly, is the downtown connectivity project. And in that regard, you should anticipate seeing significant communications. Keep in mind that a big chunk of that work initially is focused on one-on-one business contacts. So it's not really going to be at large to the public, but more narrowly focused on affected businesses in the downtown core area. But then we'll be doing broader messaging to the community at large. And it would be my hope that the residents of Richland and the businesses of Richland experience that this is one of the more significant outreach experiences that they've had or seen more communications about this than perhaps other projects they've seen, because from talking with city staff and city council directives, they really want to make sure people understand the significance of this project. They understand that there will be inconvenience created by this project, but ultimately, like a good omelet, you break a couple eggs and you have a tasty omelet at the end of the day. And there's a bigger vision here for some significant improvements in traffic flow that is going to result in a bigger and better experience for the residents in general, and the businesses, as a result of the downtown connectivity project. So my hope is that you'll see a lot of those communications, that we're a part of the team that's effectively delivering those and making sure that if you swing a cat in the Richland area, you're gonna find out some bit of information about what's going on with that project. There's Andre asked a question, which is, why is the external company being paid to do a communications assessment and activities rather than the city comm staff doing it? So I have a few thoughts on this, Holly. I don't want to step on your toes. If you'd like me to answer first, I can, and then I can throw it to you.
Sure.
So I'll just share from my perspective. It is quite common in the private sector and for a lot of public agencies to engage consultants to come out and help out, either because there's spikes of work that need to happen on particular time-sensitive projects and they want some outside help, or they want to benefit from the insights and feedback of a firm that has worked across multiple public agencies. So one of the things I'm pretty proud of at our firm at Trippepi Smith is we've been working in the local government space for over 15 years, working with public agencies all over the West Coast of America. We've actually worked in probably almost 300 local government agencies, or worked with in some way, shape, or form 300 local government agencies. And that kind of breadth of exposure really gives us an opportunity to see all sorts of different ways that local governments are addressing communications and better engaging with the public. What I have typically found is when I walk into a city hall and I sit down with a professional like Holly or with a city manager like John, they're super interested in saying, well, what are other cities doing? What's working for those other cities? What's successful? What's not? How are they sustaining it? Things of that nature. And because our work has been so broad and we worked in so many different types of entities, we tend to bring a lot of ideas and approaches and rigorous structures to an analysis that really helps out city staff to better understand what best practices would work and are applicable to their city, which ones aren't, right? Not every city is the same. We recognize that. And we think we bring a lot of value add from that perspective. So that's why oftentimes an outside perspective could be tremendously helpful for the staff who are just inside working hard every day, trying to just deliver on the things they've been doing. And maybe they don't always get the chance to see all the other cool opportunities that are out there that could further enhance the work that they're doing at City Hall. And then Holly, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ryder. We have a great team in our communications office here at the city, and we work very hard every day to get as much information out there to our citizens as we can using several different tools, press releases, social media, e-notifications through our website, our reader boards, our wayfinding signage. We have so many different tools and resources that we use. Some of them are old, and having someone like Trippepi Smith come in and help us streamline those and look for some new tools that perhaps their data and their research can help support us as we go to leadership and city council and say, we need access to these and we can better communicate with our citizens. So at the same time, we are supporting 10 departments and several utilities within Richland. Richland has most utilities where other communities around us do not. And so we still have to operate and function and support all of these other departments and all of these other projects, like the comprehensive plan. We're launching 5 websites within the next 2 months. We're launching a new internal product for our HR team and a new utility billing software. So it takes a lot of balancing, and to have the support of Trepepi to assist us with looking at ways that we can better utilize the tools and resources and the time that we have, and more successfully have our citizens feel as though they are getting the information that they want in a timely manner.
Great. Thank you for that, Holly. I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and then I want to flip the script, and we're going to, having taken the time to answer some questions, I want to start asking some questions because I want to make sure you all on the public side get an opportunity to share some of your thoughts and ideas with us around the questions we have. So another question here, Desiree asks, where are the surveys coming from? She had noted that she's a Richland resident, had not seen the Polko survey. So I think maybe, Holly, my understanding is the Polko surveys, they do a mailing format, and then they also do random dial phone calls to execute on that survey. Is that your recollection?
Yeah, it's a random sampling that they take of all registered voters within the city. And so they want to make sure that all of the residents who take the survey are from Richland, and so it's all statistically valid. They have data analysts that review it, and so they will send the postcards to random addresses, and we hope that those who receive them will take the time to complete the survey to those statistically valid addresses. And then once that is completed, they will open it up to a full public opportunity to respond to the survey. They don't always combine the statistically valid responses with the overall public responses, but that's what you see on the website with the reporting that we had this last time.
Yeah, it's very common practice that I mean, the survey research involves sampling the public, so you're inevitably going to miss the vast majority of the public is not going to be sampled because you only need a smaller sample to actually get what you need to have a statistically valid survey based upon statistics, which is unfortunately a class I did not do very well in college, but I'm going to trust the scientists on that one and the mathematicians. And then last anonymous question here, which is, how does the city decide what is actively communicated, i.e. it goes out on email or Facebook posts, versus what is passively communicated saying, oh, we just put it on the website? So maybe you want to think, Holly, about how you address that. And then I can ask, well, how do you address that in Richland? Because I certainly have a perspective on how we address that more globally with public agencies.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, we actively communicate just about everything. We will look at something, whether it's a campaign or an update, and determine which tools that we're going to use to distribute that. We have 5 Facebook pages. The police department, the fire department, parks and rec, library, and the city. Every message and every update isn't always relevant for each one of those audiences. So we take it upon ourselves to make the best judgment that we can to determine which tools that we use and which ones are the most effective. So that's very rarely is anything ever just updated on the website. We have bill inserts, we have media releases. It's all really dependent upon what the project is, and so we use, like I said, our best judgment. And going through this process with Trepepi will help us to streamline that a little bit better.
Yeah, I always note that, I mean, technically you could communicate to infinity. I mean,
you really could.
You could spend trillions of dollars communicating. There's really no limit to it. But other than the fiscal reality, and you want to be appropriately thoughtful of taxpayer dollars. So you have to pick the things that make the most sense to optimize the audiences, because you can't, if everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. And so, kids have storybook hour at the library might get different treatment than Coffee with a Cop, which might get different treatment than a town hall about the downtown connectivity project, right? And they're going to be different tools that make sense for communicating about those things. There's one thing that in particular, I just want to note that's very unique to Richland, which is in my work in local government, I think Richland may be the most comprehensive set of services delivered for its public that I have encountered, in that you have water and power utility and trash hauling services and a full service police department, and the list goes on and on. It's a impressive operation, and kind of partly speaks, I think, to the origin story of the city. Those not only create lots of work that has to get done and lots of engagement and services that are directly being delivered by the city to its residents, but each one of those touch points, like especially utility services, as we discovered in some of our research, is a huge touch point of customer service and public engagement to really make an impact and communicate with residents. So those have actually opened up lots of opportunities, I think, for communication with the community. And those are some of the recommendations we specifically had that we'd like to see the city better leverage some of those tools for engaging with the public on. So, all right. So thank you for your patience while we went through and answered some of those questions. I want to be respectful of that. I'm trying to do math here, 43 minutes left. And so now I'd like to take 43 minutes and talk to you and have you guys do some sharing of ideas. So I'm going to facilitate a conversation here. There's some questions up, and I have a bonus question I'm going to start with, actually, just to kind of get the creative juices flowing and get some people maybe less nervous to share their ideas. I also just want to remind you, I'm hoping we stay on topic for the topics at hand, and I get to put on my facilitator hat and say, if we're getting off topic too far, I'm going to try to reel you back in to make sure we stay focused on giving us helpful answers that are going to help us do a better job and help the city do a better job with overall communications. So first question, not on this list, but one that I'm going to throw as a bonus one out there to start with, which is, could you share a time when you felt the city did a good job or a great job of communicating, and why do you think it was great? Or, because I always know there's alternative, or maybe share a story when you felt the city did a poor job of communicating and why you think it was poorly done. So as a reminder, if you wish to come off mute and share your thoughts, just raise your hand. And then one of my rockstar Zoom techs is going to free you up with the ability to come off mute, and we'll hopefully hear your pristine voice, and we can engage in some discourse together. We're going to see who's not going to be shy. All right, Desiree.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I actually think this town hall was really well communicated. Like, this is probably one of the best ones that I've seen so far. It was kind of everywhere, all over my feed, as far as social media goes, and it was talked about in my community circle.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you guys did with this particular town hall, that worked well.
Okay. Well, I think stay on the line with me for a second, and maybe I'll turn to Cindy too to remind me, or Holly. We did do some boosted social media on this. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And we did press release.
We did.
And then we had it on the website.
And we created a Facebook event. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. The one thing I've observed, Desiree, is that boosting. Mark Zuckerberg likes to make some money, so you got to spend a little bit of money to boost with Mark and on the Facebook platforms, the Meta platforms. But on a cost per delivery basis, which is where we get into the kind of analytics, it can be tremendously high return value. So that's good to know. Since you were brave enough to come offline and share your thoughts on something that went well, and I appreciate that, how about something that we could have done better on, or a situation where you felt like the city under communicated on? Nothing coming to mind?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I guess maybe events I are probably the thing that I never really hear about until the day of or after the fact. Um, I do try, I have three children, 14, 9, and 7, girls and boys. We're all pretty involved. They're all in sports. We're involved with schools, with their school stuff. And so we're actively just trying to figure out what's going on in the community. And I feel like it's always um just I just find out about things a little bit too late, even when I'm actively searching, what to do, or what the city is offering, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Does the school do anything really well with communications that would be something the city should learn from or take advice on? Or not, it's always tough
Yeah.
to recreate because the reality is schools hold the most precious asset in your life, which is your children. So you'll always be more inclined to listen to the school than the city. But having said that, is there something we can learn from them?
I love the way that the school is always pushing out alerts and notifications through Parent Square. I mean, snow days, they do a great job of getting a hold of us through our phone, through I think our personal email, and also through Parent Square. But again, I mean, I'm just very active, like as far as looking up what's going on. So whenever I get the notification, I mean, it is a two-way street. You get the notification, you need to click on the notification. Um, so yeah, I think maybe just the phone calls are really helpful, as far as reminders. But I mean, it is us as citizens that need to be clicking those notifications or adding these things to our calendar, like this town hall. I mean, it was added to my Google Calendar a couple days ago when I heard about it. So
Okay, great. Excellent job. Thank you for being the first to raise your hand. I appreciate it. All right, I see a next hand up from Mel. Let's go ahead and give Mel a chance to share his voice, or I shouldn't say his. I'm not sure if Mel is a man or a woman.
I'm a woman.
My apologies, Mel.
That's okay. I work out at Hanford, so it's easier to go by a male or a unisex name. So I do 100% agree with Desiree that this particular event was probably the most well broadcast event that I've ever seen since my 15 years living in Richland. I also have to say that one event that I personally think that they did great communication was the triathlon. And I have to say that part of the reason why I noticed it right off the bat was that I am a distance runner. So, it perked up my interest and I did volunteer. But I think a lot of the other citizens just didn't get the memo about the traffic. And there was a lot I saw on Facebook, on Richland residents page, a lot of complaining. That being said, I personally don't believe anything that's on Facebook, and I need to be able to verify that that is real.
Mm-hmm.
So the Richland webpage as a citizen is very difficult to get information. There's like maybe a little blurb somewhere, but there's not many details. So on a big event like that, I think putting mailers or somebody going around and putting old-fashioned, put mailers in mailboxes, because we have a lot of older people that don't use Facebook or Instagram or X. So I think that would be a great way to get information across. Sure, put it on Richland residents that it's happening, and then let people be able to go, so that it's talked about, but let somebody, have an events page on the Richland website. It's just and part of it is because it is such a, like you said, the services in Richland, they're many, and this is very unusual. But
Yeah. May I speak to Mel about that, Ryder?
sure.
Yeah. So the city did not lead the effort for the Ironman. It was led by Visit Tri-Cities, but it was located within Richland. And so we shared the information that was generated by Ironman and Visit Tri-Cities. And we did do mailers with the residents who were directly impacted by the closures. And sometimes those kind of fall to deaf ears to people as well. But we did have some lessons learned for sure during that effort, considering the sheer size of it, and the number of people coming into our community. And we'll definitely look at better ways that we can communicate and maybe change some of those traffic impacts that occurred, and making sure that there are alternative ways and clear detours established for that. But yeah, and I would also mention this event you said was well communicated. Every event that we do in a very similar fashion. So, that's the gal who was speaking earlier. Desiree, thank you. Yeah, it was any of our parks and recreation events, we create, the Facebook events, and we boost them. We have advertising budget for boosting. And yeah. But it's good feedback to hear that sometimes, yeah.
I mean, initially how I heard about the triathlon was that there was a billboard down at the Leslie Groves boat dock. There's a place for billboards down there. And I was like, what? And so I went on the Ironman page. And I just want to say that, you guys really did a great job, and the citizens of Richland really did a great job, because that was voted number 2 in the United States for triathlons. So you're going to have a lot more traffic this year.
Those Ironmans are great ways to discover parts of America you otherwise might not see, which is a nice upside. And I have a couple client agencies that I've done work for that had Ironmans come to town, and they also suffered through traffic issues and lots of complexities and lots of hard lessons learned the first year they did it, which is true of almost everything you do for the first time. But I appreciate, Holly, you acknowledging that there were lessons learned from that and an opportunity to do better.
Always. We always want to know how we can do things better.
Yeah. And I think, Mel, you made a really interesting, another helpful comment too, which serves as a reminder, which is when people are interested in the content, they tend to perk up, right? You're a long distance runner. So of course you're going to be interested in Ironman. I am not a long distance runner, so I may not be as interested in Ironman content, other than admiring those who can do it. But the point is, of when you craft the content, you need to make sure that our content is crafted in a way that makes it of interest to the person who's seeing it, either because the visual resonates with them and they realize it's part of the Richland experience, or it's speaking to something that's just going to resonate with them when they say, oh, wait a minute, I should probably pay attention to this because this could impact my day-to-day quality of life. And how you craft that message to make sure it's relatable and not just like bureaucratic program X is always, I'm not saying that's happening now, I'm just saying the general theme of good communications is you're always cognizant of that. So I appreciate you making that point, Mel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mel.
All right. And I see a hand raised for Caitlin. Let's go ahead and go to Caitlin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Caitlin, I can.
Perfect. I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Mel was saying. I kind of brought to my mind that it's important anytime we're talking about communication to meet people where they're at and how they consume information. So absolutely, I'm on board with her, and how the older generation consumes information. That's obviously important. I also think there's a need for the younger generation. A lot of us use apps, and I hear everything you guys are saying about content and being able to push things on social media. Part of the benefit of having an app is you don't have to worry about boosting stuff. We're able to consume that as we want to consume it. And I think there is a good amount of the younger generation now who's more involved in their local government, takes an interest in this. And that's something that I would personally interact with on a regular basis.
Meaning if there were a dedicated city app that was pushing messaging to you, that is something that would be of interest?
Correct. I could control notifications if I wanted that. If I just wanted to seek it out myself, I could do that. If there were events coming up that I wanted to add to my calendar, I would be able to do that from the app. Anytime that there were citywide notifications going out, again, that could be accessed there. I know when they did the Ironman, there was a lot of information, and kind of from multiple different outlets, of course, because, there were so many different groups involved in making that happen. But I think having one kind of place that you can go to for information on what's going on in Richland would be really useful and interesting, especially for younger generations.
Okay, great.
Good comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else, Caitlin, you want to share? Maybe on an example of something that we didn't do so well when it came to communicating? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I just realized I had to unmute it again.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. I know on the triathlon event, there was a lot of mixed feedback on that. And again, I think it comes down to how people consume information. So obviously putting out mailers to the people that were directly affected is a great thought, but I do think there's another kind of section of the community that was missed in that wasn't directly involved, but maybe needed to leave the house that morning and then didn't know how to access the information if they're not, super familiar, or if they don't enjoy using the internet. So,
Right.
I know that was an issue for some people, and it's, again, just providing information in the ways that people take it in.
Yeah. Let me ask you a quick question. If there's a putting you on the spot. Do you get the utility bill at home for power, or do you get an email?
I get an email.
Okay. So you don't get the experience of opening up an envelope and seeing your bill and whatever insert would be in that, right?
No, but that's my preference to not get that. I requested to get it via email.
Yeah. And then when you do get your email, do you ever, is there ever any additional communication available in that email concerning other activities in the city?
Not that I've ever noticed, no.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up is Randy Slovic. Randy?
My question was that since several people mentioned that they thought that the communication tonight was good, I wondered how many people are on this webinar. I mean, how good is good? Does that mean 10 people are here, or 100 people are here, or 1,000 people are here?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randy. So first of all, there's about 26 folks that are on this call right now. And I would say that in my experience of doing community engagement work, where there is theoretically, like we're not talking about building a shelter or something controversial, right? That usually when you don't have anything controversial, you get relatively small turnout. And of course that scales with the size of the city, although not much. Right. So the 26 people that are here tonight are the elite few who chose to show up and take the time to learn about communication in the city and then share and voice their opinions, and why I'm very appreciative that people showed up. By way of example, I was at a workshop last night, an in-person workshop in a city that is a third the size of Richland. And there we were doing a strategic planning process, and it was a workshop to discuss kind of issues and things to work on in the city for the next 2 years. And we ended up with about 60 people who participated in that conversation. So there we had a big turnout. Well, I should say big. We had bigger turnout, and we were kind of guessing going in. We had maybe have 20, and we ended up with a lot more. It's always kind of an interesting mystery about how many people would show up with the right, kind of what the right ratio is to expect. Holly, I would surmise that, I mean, there have been town halls that you guys have tried to promote and get people to come to, and you've had 3 or 4 people show up. And there have been others where you've had more than 100, is my recollection from our conversation. So 26 on a Zoom webinar is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's pretty, I guess, to your question, Randy, is not a low number, not a high number, but a solid number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. And I guess maybe, Randy, while I got you, we give you a chance to talk. Do you want to tell me if we've ever done a great job communicating on something, or we've fallen short in some area that you'd love to share with us?
Are you talking about the city council? Are you talking about the city, or just...
Yeah, how the city communicates itself?
Well, the city council doesn't discuss much at their meetings, and that's going to hurt. communicating with the citizens of the city, the residents of the city. I mean, everything's on a consent calendar. Nothing gets debated or discussed. Everything gets one vote, and that's hurting their communication. I mean, you can do what you want to help it along, but if the people in charge are not doing their job, then I don't know what you can do to help them.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
All right. So I'm dealing with a slight technical issue in that one of our compatriots on our team who was with us, she just completely lost power at her home. And so she has disappeared off into the abyss of Zoom world for me. I guess I want to make sure either Olivia or Skylar on my team is in a position to give people the ability to speak still. Is that correct? You're good, Skylar? Okay, great. We're going to plow ahead. Don't worry. Sydney's still alive. She just doesn't have power. Anybody else have a response to that first question? Anytime we've done well or we've done poorly in communicating that you'd like to share with us so we can learn a lesson tonight? Just throw your hand up if you do. Okay, let me turn to the next question for this group, which is, what are the most common ways you hear from the city? So this is a pretty straightforward one. So I'd welcome a hand to be raised and we can have a little further conversation about how you typically feel like you're hearing from the city. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have anything you'd like to share. Well, I see a hand up for Mel. Gold star, Mel. And you'll need to unmute yourself, Mel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I do still get my paper bill because I like the mailer that comes in it. So every month I hear from the city.
Okay, great.
And that's it.
All right, we'll take it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then I see a hand up for Chelsea.
Hello.
Hi, Chelsea.
As a true elder millennial, I get all of my information from Facebook, and I think the city does a really great job, especially with utilities, communicating what's going on when there's delays or weather things or whatever it is.
Okay. Any other tools you hear from the city, or you're going to ride hard in that elder millennial situation?
I think I have to truly commit to my elder millennialism.
I'm proud of you. Thank you for admitting it in such a public fashion.
It's embarrassing, but thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Anybody else want to share with us how you most commonly hear from the city? Desiree, let's unmute you.
Also Facebook. I'm 36, so that's where I get all my information as well. But like somebody had mentioned before, if there was an app, I would so much rather just use an app. It was a genius idea that I really hope you guys implement that.
Thank you. First of all, it is exciting for me to hear two people raise that. Just an observation, and I'd love to know if others feel similarly. In my experience with cities, apps were super exciting. If you guys can remember, like the when apps started being a thing in the like 2008, 2009, and the iPhone started taking off, and everybody wanted an app. We saw a lot of apps start popping up for cities. And as we looked at the data on that, what we saw is there'd be a bump of people who would subscribe to the app, but the actual use of it wasn't high. It was just pretty low utilization. So you'd only end up getting like 3 or 4% of the residents actually using it. And now this is older apps that have been around, and it's been an evolution of people going to just mobile friendly websites first and foremost because of the changing technology environment around us. So there's trends in a number of directions on this. But a compelling app that actually has useful information that's consistently updated is and has a way to push messaging, particularly around emergency communications, let alone just events and whatnot, certainly can be an attractive asset and fits in the form factor that people are used to, which is a mobile device. Obviously, that doesn't work for, say, folks that don't have smartphones. But if you look at the data on that, you're pushing 90+% of the public has a smartphone as well, almost regardless of economic circumstance and almost regardless of age bracket. So we'll take that under consideration. I appreciate you raising that. All right. Anybody else have some thoughts that they want to share about common ways you hear from the city? And there we go. Scott?
Yeah, we get emails through the flash alerts, and then there's other e-notify emails like about council meetings. Also through the Tri-City Herald newspaper. We subscribe to their app so we can read the articles. And also, whenever there's a kind of a question or something, we go to the city's website and use that for finding out information that maybe isn't so much news related, but it can be news related, but just for other information. And then also we have an employee in the household, so they get the employee newsletter.
Oh, you have a city employee that works who works for the city that lives in the house?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Lordy, I hope they know what's going on.
The employee newsletter often includes some, general news about what's going on in the city, even like business openings or things of that nature.
Okay. When you go to the city website to search for content, are you able to find stuff?
We are after some practice. I think the city's website is undergoing it's going to be changed pretty soon, so it'll be a new learning curve.
Fair enough. Holly, could you take thank you for that, Scott. I appreciate it. Holly, could you, for the benefit of the elite that showed up tonight, could you share real quick, like a little bit of the details on these new websites? Are we changing website platforms, or with same website provider, we're just doing an upgrade? What's going on there?
That's correct. The last time we launched our websites was 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago. We're using a platform called Granicus, which they are common providers for government CMSs. And we're continuing with Granicus. We have 70 employees who access the content management system for our website, and so we didn't want to have to go through an entire new learning process for the back end, and we've been pleased with their service. However, we were greatly in need of some refreshes, so we don't just have the main city website. We have 5 websites total. We have the Parks and Rec website, we have the library, we have our business and economic development website, and we have the Benton County Emergency Services websites. They each have a different goal, service that they provide. And so that said, all of them, the trend is going to more of a search-centric site where you can type something in and it'll, with the new technology, it will find that answer for you more quickly. And we went through a significant effort to kind of redesign the site maps and just make them more accessible and more functional. And then we'll also have a chat bot on the main site that will be AI that will also assist with getting information to people on a much quicker basis. And then at the same time, we'll be launching a brand new customer service utility portal because it's going to be a lot more clear and technical. You can read what your usage is on all of your utilities, and much more user-friendly, much more up-to-date, and that will have an app associated with it as well. It will be called My Meter. So it's good timing for us to be refreshing a lot of these tools and resources for our citizens and making the information more easily available.
Yeah, I think that partly like that chatbot you're referring to, what we've seen in the market is there have been a number of these chatbots that have been developed around AI technology and trying to ingest information off city websites and make it more discoverable to kind of bypass the built-in web search features, and just make it more usable. In some ways, these chatbots are actually just using AI to digest information, and you could literally ask the chatbot a question and it actually comes up with a pretty good answer. So you can say, well, what's the permit fee to install a new toilet? And it's like, oh, well, the permit fee is this and this, and here's a link to go look it up. And they can be pretty powerful. So that'll be an exciting new feature to roll out.
Yeah.
And I think your comment about the utility is interesting, just because, as we noted, like the utility touches every single household in the community. So it is, it's not as important as children, but it is, the ability to turn on your sink and have water come out, or you turn on the light switch and power turns on, is pretty important, as evidenced by the fact that Sydney lost her power and couldn't be here. So, I just say that because that means there'll be a lot of opportunity for community engagement on that particular tool. And when I think about apps that are successful, it's because there's a critical reason you have to have the app. And certainly, although I'm sure you're not required to have the app will become a very good companion for you as a user of the utilities in the city. So that'll be very interesting.
Yes.
Let me change directions real quick and go to another question, which is, what subjects are of most interest to you that you feel the city could share more about or on? So, is there some topic out there that you would love to see addressed and spoken about more consistently? And Scott, I still see your hand up. If you still want to talk, we're happy to have you talk. If your hand is still up because you hadn't taken it down from being raised, then you can take it down from being raised. I'm guessing Scott wants to talk. Let's let Scott talk.
It's Carmen here now.
Okay.
I think that website and that's great. That's a great, sounds like it's been a great improvement. What I was wondering about, and I'm not really sure, there's a lot of exciting businesses coming in up in north of Richland here, and maybe I've just missed it, but I think it might be important to make sure that the public have a way to interact back with the city council about the businesses coming in. I think that they're very exciting and but ethically, like some of the businesses coming in could raise concerns among the public, and I just wonder if there's a way for people to reach back, or a way that people are invited to reach back to the city. And even if people are coming back with positive comments, just keeping a finger on that pulse might be something that's ethically, that the city government, we could ask, we would ask city council to do. Yeah, if I'm making sense there.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is there are some, I guess I'll use the term, unique businesses coming into the area. Some exciting, some may or may not come with concerns for some individuals. And the question is there a methodology by which people get to share their either concerns or enthusiasm for the businesses that are opening? Is that a fair expression of what you just said?
Exactly. And I think it would be, I think ethically speaking, it would be something that's wise to do. And I think it could be helpful in the long run if keeping a feel on that.
So, and I guess the question is keeping a feel on that specific to new business openings and economic development issues?
Yeah. And specific to some of the businesses that are coming in. Except, for example, small modular reactors, which is super exciting, but I think that it's important not to conflate that everybody would be as excited, as just because we have nuclear already. I think it's important not to conflate the two. And I know that's another topic, and I don't know if that goes into, what the city communications, into their field, but I just think it's worth bringing it up and just having it on the horizon and in the conversation.
That's interesting. So I guess part of that is a question of from Holly's perspective of looking at the inbound information coming in and what's going on in the community, what is a topic that she would suspect is going to be of interest or concern or whatnot to the community that she'd like to highlight or discuss? I guess Holly, I'd turn to you real quick, just out of curiosity, because two questions. One is, how do you identify maybe stories that are not city news? Because in some ways, like a business opening, short of it having a permitting process or conditional use permit, is not really city news, in that it's the market just doing what the market's going to do. And then this kind of related question is that secondary one, which is, from the city's perspective, is there any current formal channel for channeling feedback or questions to the city, like a standardized email address or some other web form, or is it basically come to the city council meeting and use public comment to say something? Like what's the spectrum of formalized communication?
Yeah, providing public comment in a city council meeting, emailing. You can email the city council members and provide your input. You could email me and I could find an answer for you. But I think one of the initiatives along with this community strategic communications and community engagement plan is to also identify more opportunities such as this town hall for maybe having more regular opportunities for people to have dialogue and provide feedback in a setting such as this. So I think, there are those that are required along with initiatives such as the comprehensive plan. But I think, it may be something that TRPEPI recommends that we do incorporate a more consistent community meeting program, allowing more dialogue, not only with staff, but others within the community.
Sure. Yeah, one thing I'll observe along those lines too is I think the public comment at council meetings is certainly important, right?
Yeah.
Not a denial about that at all. It is unfortunately a format which is not particularly constructive, and then it's not a dialogue. It's just a,
Right.
what way I talk to you, and typically, like, the council's not in a position to respond back. Like, it's actually almost against the rules effectively. So town halls, more informal settings, are a much better way to try to engage in dialogue and conversation, which results, when you can actually speak back and forth, you usually get a much higher level of understanding and awareness. And those are good trust building exercises. So, all right, we got a couple of hands raised here. Let's go to Desiree, if we can give her a chance to come off mute.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit shaky. I'm outside and it is freezing. My house is loud. Okay, so I have a couple, I guess, questions or concerns or comments, however you want to frame that. I know in a lot of the Facebook groups, city spending seems to be an issue that I see, just people in general concerned with. I have gone to city council meetings before, and even the ones that I went to, it does seem to be an issue, just with citizens asking, well, where's this money coming from? Where's that money going? And there's usually a lot of pushback, and maybe a little bit of defensiveness, just because those questions aren't, at least the ones that I went to, they weren't really answered. So that was one of the, I guess, concerns I had. You had mentioned earlier in the meeting that you wanted to work on city branding. And as a citizen, I actually want to know, what is our branding? When I grew up in the Tri-Cities, moved away and lived, literally all over the world in the United States. And I came back, and it's a very different city from what I grew up with. And so when I think about our branding, I don't, as a city citizen, I don't really understand who we are supposed to be. Are we trying to be modern? Are we trying to be like some wine country, even though the wine industry is dying? Are we trying to like really reflect our Hanford, our nuclear background? And it's always kind of like this mix of these, to not sound so, I don't know how to say this in a very nice way, but we have aging citizens here. And I feel like a lot of what we see as far as decisions go are very much towards those citizens that are here, but we also have a up and coming group of families that I feel like there's a very big divide in what we see as far as our council and what they tend to go for versus the people that actually live here. So as far as like concerns go, yeah, I think just wanting to know, where are we going? What is our brand? How can we as citizens have any kind of say in that? And how, I guess, how to be more involved with those marketing decisions.
Okay. So first of all, just raising those questions is important. So I appreciate that because they're something we can be responding to. I just want to note that we do have a hard stop, Holly. I know well, we all have to actually drop at 7:30. So I'm going to answer this question, and if I'm not going to try to talk too long, but I want to be thorough in my answer. Questions about spending. Standard, we see that a lot of agencies, a lot of questions, because ultimately that's where the rubber meets the road. I believe there's is there a financial transparency portal right now at this city, Holly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. It's our ClearGov portal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So there's a ClearGov portal that's designed to address some of those questions. That's not me. It may not address all the questions that are being raised, right? So, but it's a starting point to try to address some of those questions. Can
I ask where that's at? Because you had mentioned that there's 5 different websites. So where would we find that?
That's on the main city's website. And you would just go to ci.richland.wa.us/budget. And I can have them put that in the chat for you, and that will take you to the approved budget.
So that's I guess that addresses things like what the budget allocation is, and then and we can do some following. We can have, I think, broadly speaking, because we won't have time to get all the details on that. But then there's questions about like actual warrant registry expenditures and where those funds are going and how we're tracking against budget and things like that may or may not be able to be integrated into a ClearGov to give you kind of real-time details about expenditure choices and money flows and things like that. I think the branding one is at the risk of glossing over those finances, because there's lots of complicated answers there on some of that. The branding one's a particularly interesting one in that I think what we identified is that there's a logo, but there's work to be done that around like what that logo is supposed to mean, right? What's the emotional response you're supposed to have? When I say Richland, you say what? And there's lots of different perspectives on that. And the truth is, everybody's brand experience is different depending upon their experience with the city and their childhood growing up there, or their visit there coming in midlife and arriving at the city. But you try to generally say, these are the things we'd like people to experience. And you try to craft your communications and your programming around those to reinforce that particular brand. But the process of actually saying what that brand is, that can vary from a subcommittee process into a full-blown community engagement process to really bring people together to discuss what do we see for our brand now? What do we want people to think of when they think of Richland? That gets into an entire deep conversation that is takes a lot of work to get through. But the most effective branding processes I've seen have involved very extensive community engagement, community subcommittees and resident committees to help really involve them in the process. So the brand isn't just the brand that the city bestows, but it's the brand that the community also embraces and celebrates because they were a part of creating that brand. I think to your question, what is our brand? I think Hollywood acknowledged that we have identity, but we don't necessarily have a well-defined brand for the city. We have things we like to talk about: innovation, highly educated population, an agricultural history. And then there's also some brands that are being advanced by the, say, Visit Tri-Cities area, and that brand might be different than what the city's trying to talk about, not in a bad way, but they just may have different objectives. And so that also creates a little bit of complication, some of the messaging too. So, but it's astute to raise it, and it's
Very valid. Yes.
in our assessment. It is 7:30, and I know we have a couple people that do need to go. So first, I just want to thank everybody who participated tonight, and really appreciate you joining this evening. If you wish to get follow up with any comments or questions, I'm going to chat my email address into the chat. Hopefully you all get that. You also had that form to fill out. Please feel free to go back and fill out that form if you want to answer questions that we didn't get a chance to hear from you tonight about. But we really appreciate your participation this evening and appreciate you being here. We're going to keep working on our strategic plan with Holly and the team, and that's really going to take all the great information we have from the assessment and turn that into actionable items in a timeline. And we anticipate having that in the next couple of months here as we continue working with the team. Meanwhile, we look forward to working with Holly and the team on also talking about the downtown connectivity project and trying to make sure everybody in the world understands what's going on with that. So with that, Holly, anything you want to conclude with?
No, I thank everyone for participating and joining us this evening. And thank you, Ryder, and your team for your support.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure. We really love working in Richland. It's been a great experience. You got great
Likewise.
food scene there, by the way. I love, you came to visit. I put on about 5 pounds because it was so much. All right. You guys have a great night. Thank you, Richland.
Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.